Well, good morning to everyone. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. I am going to be talking to you about something that I actually lived through. I'm not a person that did my caregiving stint, and I absolutely did work the entire time that I was a caregiver. So when I was contacted, when I was asked, could you talk about this? I was like, yes, I certainly can. I can talk from personal experience. There's just nothing like the personal experience aspect. I've had to talk about things that I haven't personally experienced and things that I have. So for me, this is a big deal that I can actually address you guys. Um, all caregivers work. Let me be clear. If you are a caregiver and you are not employed by a company, believe me, you are working. There is no doubt about that. But if you are a caregiver and you are also employed, you are working for a paycheck, that adds a dimension that it's rough. It's another, whether you're working full-time or part-time, it's more responsibility on your plate. And sometimes as caregivers, we hit our limits, just honestly speaking. Sometimes we just hit that point where we're like, I can't do anything else. And it feels like we can't make it. But let's talk through that today. Let's look at that. What I want to do today is address these issues. I want you to be encouraged. I want you to be educated, look at some options that you may have, and I want you to go away from here empowered. I want you to know that you can do this. And honestly, you guys, you're caregivers, you're rock stars. And I am so honored and privileged to be able to talk to you today. So let's get started. Let's look at this thing and see what we can do with it. Let me ask you this. Do you remember being in school? And then for me, that takes me back, quite a little bit. I didn't get out of school just last year. But think back with me if you can. When you were in school, did you have that one weekend where every teacher clearly conspired against you and you had homework that was assigned in every subject? I'm talking math, English, history, science, the whole story. And then on top of it, while they're giving all this stuff, they're saying, oh, you need to also remember that your term paper draft is going to be due the same day that all these other assignments are. Oh, and the science project, it's also due. And everything was due on Monday and you had to have it done. I do remember occasions like that. And if you protested, I remember trying to look at the teachers and go, is there any way I can have an extension? Can we wait and not have to have everything due on this one day? And the teachers would invariably say things like, you're learning to manage your time well, and you're learning good, multitasking skills. These are things you're going to need as you get older. And you thought, well, okay, because they always made it sound like it was such a noble goal, like we could absolutely do this. And there was every reason that we should do this. Of course, when we were kids, we were like, this is cruel. It's horrible. We hate this. But you then kind of divide into two groups. You have some students that go into the group of like, okay, I'm going to hunker down and I'm going to get this done. And then you had other folks that they decided they would spend their time looking at all the reasons they couldn't get it done. And they came out with some nifty excuses, honestly, some of the funniest things I ever heard. Some of the kids that would say things like, well, my mother thought that my homework was so wonderful. She wanted to hang it on my refrigerator immediately. And she wanted to look at it every day, so I couldn't bring it. Or people that said, well, I was driving to school and the window was rolled down and my homework just blew out and there was nothing I could do. So, we had quite a bit of amusement over some of the excuses people would come up with as to why they couldn't get it all done. But here we are years later as adults and many of us as caregivers. We look back now and I can acknowledge to you that I have really never used algebra. It just has not been an issue. I have never had to map out the destination where the train leaving New York and the train leaving Los Angeles were going to converge at this point, at this time. That just has not even been an issue. That has not come up in my life. Now, as an author, I have needed to know the difference between a run-on sentence and a compound sentence, and understanding good subject-verb agreement. That's been fairly important for me. But telling you what gases make up the rings of Saturn, not so much. I have not even visited with that ever. That has not come up for me. So what was it all about? These teachers cramming all this work on us and we only had a short period of time to do it. What was it all about? What was it for? Well, we probably reasoned we were in some sort of training for something. Most of us had no idea what we were training for. But today, as caregivers, aren't we glad that we had this opportunity to be pushed to multitask? Aren't we glad that we were encouraged that we really could do more than one or two things at a time? I know it seriously helped me when I took on the role of caregiving. That role of caregiving, as I mentioned, is so exacerbated when you have the working role paired with the caregiving role. One role at a time is enough. Working full-time, even working part-time, can be labor intensive. It's, involves scheduling, things like that. Being a caregiver is certainly labor intensive. You put those two together and it can be rough. It can be ugly. For me, when I took on the role of caregiving for my grandparents, I was working, and all of a sudden I had care of these two people in my life that I loved very tremendously, definitely wanted to help. But those two worlds came together like gladiators clashing. It was horrible. I was 29 years old and I was a new bride of 8 months. And suddenly there I was faced with the situation that my grandparents needed my help. It was a mess. And ironically, my boss had gotten, fairly used to seeing me come in every day. And they liked seeing me come in because they knew that meant I was going to get my work done. And I had gotten used to going into work every day. That was my norm. I liked it. I enjoyed that lifestyle. But I did go into work because I needed my job. Again, we were newlyweds, been married 8 months. And so I certainly could not afford to quit my job at that point in time, but I was also on track, a career track. My degree is in journalism and I was in a corporate communications job. And for me, that was a really great fit. The two went together very well and I enjoyed what I did. But suddenly I was confronted with this caregiving thing, and that was not as natural of a fit for me. While I loved my grandparents and absolutely wanted to help them, the role of caregiver was shocking, stunning. I did not know exactly what was being required of me at the time, so it was quite the adjustment. For me, again, my degree is in journalism. I did not have a medical degree, therefore I could not rightly discern the issues that were actually going on with my grandparents. I don't have a law degree, so I could not understand necessarily the nuances between the different estate planning documents that I had been given to take care of my grandparents. So it was really, there was a steep learning curve, at least for me. In my situation, the weight of caregiving fell on me in one single phone call, actually. I went to bed one night. I was a normal, ordinary person. Next thing you know, when I woke up in the morning, I was fine, went to bed that night, and I was a completely different person. My whole paradigm had shifted. And just like that, I was wearing more hats than one head could wear at one time. And I wasn't sure what to do with that. In my situation, I grew up very close to my grandparents. My biological father was their son, their only son. And not long after my birth, he decided that, family life was not for him. And so he left. And so I grew up very close to my grandparents, my mom and I, very close. My mom remarried. I did have a stepdad who's actually, I call him, he's truly my dad. But as my grandparents were aging, they had no one else to turn to. So when I was in my early 20s, they established their estate plan, which turned out to be the final estate plan, the one that we actually wound up using, where they named me to have power of attorney. They gave me durable power of attorney, and I had it in both financial and medical issues. I had a sweeping document that went across the board. I was also named to be the executor of their wills. Now, I was given copies of these documents when they were drafted, but I just put them in a drawer and I did not look at them, so they really meant nothing to me. And then suddenly, in January of 1997, I pulled those documents out because I realized I was neck deep in a situation and I had to know, what am I supposed to do? Long and short of it for me was, I was living in Memphis, Tennessee at the time, and my grandparents lived up in north central Arkansas, about 2.5 hours away from me. I got a frantic phone call from their neighbor, and he said, "You need to get up here. There's a problem." Turned out they had left their house on a Saturday morning. 4 days later, they turn up on the side of the road. They are The car's been wrecked partially on the passenger side. They had a flat tire. It was below freezing temperatures. It was a mess. The sheriff got them brought back home and essentially left them with the neighbor, with Mac. His name was Mac. And he called me and he said, yeah, there's a problem. You've got to get up here. So we drop everything. We get up there. The long and the short of it was, in one day, in one fell swoop, at the absolute same time, I receive the information that my grandmother has Alzheimer's, which is a type, the most commonly diagnosed type of dementia. And my grandfather also had dementia, but his was an unspecified type. They never did discern what was going on specifically there. It's interesting because I've had the opportunity to talk to a lot of caregivers, and I have discovered that the responsibility of caregiving comes on people in different ways. Suddenly, one person has it suddenly dropped on them like I did. Others kind of it gradually comes on. But at the end of the day, when the full-blown caregiving job is taken on, I have discovered most caregivers just aren't really sure what to do with it. See, as employees of a company, we understand what the company expects of us. We know how to do that job. But this thing with caregiving, it rolls in on people and they don't know. I didn't know. And it was a mess. And for me personally, I was so caught up. As I said, I'd been married for only 8 months. So in the year or two prior, I had noticed my grandmother was saying some kind of off the wall things. She was repeating herself and different things that she was telling me that I thought these things don't connect. And I don't know what are you saying? I knew there was an issue. I was young. I did not know what to do about it. And I was so caught up in my own life that I don't think I understood that it was a serious problem until it was. And so that's exactly what happened to me when I realized, oh, wait, I've got to do something about this. So, what do I do? What do you do as a caregiver who maybe this comes in on you suddenly? Turns out this is not that uncommon of a situation because it's a shocking number of caregivers who are employed. AARP issues a report every year called the Caregiving in the United States report. The 2020 report indicates that 21.3% of Americans are currently caregiving for someone. They're providing care for a loved one, a spouse, a parent, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, whoever it may be. That's roughly 1 in 5 people. That's a decent number. That's a pretty high number, significant number. But here's the rub. Out of that 21.3%, how many of those people are currently employed? In other words, they leave the house to earn a paycheck, or even, in this environment we're in right now, they may be working from home, but the idea is they are working for a paycheck outside of caregiving duties. It's a whopping 60% of workers, of American workers, are currently involved in caregiving in some capacity. That means that 6 out of every 10 people you see are taking care of someone at home. And so that's over half of the working population of the nation. This is a big deal. So it's good that we can talk about it. The interesting thing to me, too, as I researched this, I discovered that caregiving is not confined into one demographic or one age group. This covers everybody. This covers the boomers. This covers the millennials. It covers the Gen Z, the Gen X. All age groups are involved in caregiving. So the question is, how do we handle these multiple responsibilities? What do we do to make it work? Because guys, let's go back to what we said earlier. When we were in school and we got a gigantic push of homework on Friday and it was all due on Monday, the good news there was we knew that come Monday, we were going to be able to breathe again. We were going to be able to see the light of day again. But this is not like that. You don't necessarily see an end point to it. I didn't. And this caregiving thing can go on for years and years and years. And people can't always afford to just stop their job. They can't always afford to just quit what they're doing. I couldn't. I was in that position. So what can we do? What are some strategies that we can employ? First thing is, I want you to stop and take stock of the situation and take charge of what's happening before you get overwhelmed and before you get burned out. Because I can speak to the whole overwhelmed and burned out thing. That described me perfectly, because when I hit the ground running in January, I didn't stop for months. And it does not end well. It just does not end well. You burn out, you get to a point where you almost don't care. I mean, you do care. I cared, but there was a part of me that was like, oh, please don't let my phone ring again. Don't make me have to go back up there and see about them again. In our situation, we wound up having to put my grandparents in a nursing home. So I wasn't actually taking care of them in my own home, but I dealt with the nursing home. And if anything went on, I got a phone call about it. So, and then the constant running up there, making sure were the clothes clean? Did they have what they needed? Did they have supplies in their room? Was everything okay? And it was just hard to manage to find the time. So right now, if I could look back at myself 25 years ago when this all occurred in my life, I would say take charge of the situation, because realistically, there is only so much you can do. And if you will take charge in the beginning and say, all right, we have these two roles. We are a company employee. We are also caregiver. How do we manage this? Well, it was funny because there were a lot of things I was not sure what the role of caregiver was going to demand of me. I was not organized. I did not prioritize my own well-being. There were a lot of things that I was frantic. I was hyped up as I scrambled to figure out what we were going to do to help my grandparents, to take care of them. And there was the emotional component. I loved these people very, very dearly. They were precious to me. So I cared very much about them. And that added an extra burden because there was the emotional component, having to deal with the grief of losing who they had always been and then having to accept the new reality of where we were. There were a lot of things at work there, a lot of things at play. Well, one of the things I was able to do was take charge by contacting my boss. It was one of the first things I did. I contacted her and I explained the situation. And this gets dicey because, you don't want to sit there and pour out a river and, your boss doesn't necessarily want to hear it. But you do need to communicate enough information that they see that you have a situation on your hands. I had to call the day that we were getting ready to leave Memphis to head over to my grandparents' house after I had the frantic call from the neighbor. I had to call my boss. I explained what happened. I said, I don't know what I'm going to face when I get there. I don't know how long this is going to take to play out. I don't know what's going to need to happen for me to get them settled, but I will keep you posted. And so naturally, I had to explain what I did explain to them without going into a lot of detail. In my case, I didn't have a lot of details at that early moment. But I think communication with your boss, with your manager, supervisor, let them know what you're dealing with. It might be interesting to see that they might have some solutions for you. I always tell people, seriously, knowledge truly is power. So Francis Bacon hit it right there. It's true. For the first 3 months or so of my caregiving tenure, I didn't have a lot of knowledge, but I was gaining knowledge. I was learning as I was going. And one thing I learned, for me, I burned through my vacation. I burned through my sick days and my personal days. And it was an epic situation because, like I say, I was not in a position to just not work. I couldn't just quit. We needed the income, but what was I going to do? So my company was looking at me saying, well, you're going to burn through these days. That's what you're going to do. And so I did. Now, one thing I want to point out, depending on how much time you need off, if you see that you're in the middle of a situation, even if you are a seasoned caregiver and you've been doing this for a while, you might need to talk to your human resources manager about FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act. This thing has been established so that people in situations just like this can have the time off that they need. Now, it is typically unpaid. There may be some caveats that some things can work out. Again, talk to your human resources professional about the deal that they have worked out, because it is definitely worth looking into. If you need, some scenarios, they provide up to 12 weeks off in a year. Some scenarios will take actually up to 26 weeks off. So you could actually wind up with almost half the year if you needed that kind of time. If you had a sudden emergency, like I say, I was a new caregiver when I had to take all this time off. Some people have been seasoned caregivers and then suddenly something will happen that their loved one needs some sort of adjustment, and it's just going to take time. So you can't always do everything. You can't just go to work and leave the loved one and go, no, I'll get back to you when I get back home at 5 o'clock this evening. Not always practical. Can't do that. So FMLA is definitely something you want to look at. This is one of the websites that I will give you. The website to find out more about FMLA. It is www.dol.gov/agencies/WHD/FMLA. Read that again, www.dol.gov/agencies/WHD/FMLA. So you can look there. That will take you directly to the page, the website that's been set up so that you can get information about it. And again, I encourage talk to your human resources professionals about that, because that is in their wheelhouse. They know about it and they can give you direction and information there. The second thing that I encourage caregivers to do is to take charge, yes, but get organized. Now, some people hear that word and they panic, because some people are naturally fanatically organized and have all the cans in their pantry lined up and turned the right way. And that's great for those who can do that. Some people struggle. It is not something that is part of their natural bent. But I will tell you, if you will take the time, get organized, you may even need to utilize a professional service initially to get you kind of on path, on track to sort of work with an individual, a professional who can say, okay, let's talk about your personality. How do you do? Do you do well with lists? Do you need it on the refrigerator? Do you need it on a notepad? How do you work best? Talk to some of these folks. They can really help out. But getting organized, for me, it was a key factor in being able to take care of my grandparents and maintain doing my job. I always say that, when I was working and it would be, business hours, and I would have certain phone calls that I had to make because they were dealing with my grandparents, but they were only available during business hours. You couldn't wait until after work. They were closed at 5 o'clock. So you couldn't come home and, I'll do it later. You couldn't do it on Saturday. They were closed on the weekends. Well, what I encourage is this. I sat down and I scheduled out my day. I saw when my lunch hour was going to be, and I would try to make those phone calls during my lunch hour. So I'm calling during the business day, but I'm also not messing with my actual work. And that's important to me. I wanted my boss to see, I appreciated they were working with me. I wanted to work with them as well. So it was a mutually beneficial thing for me to say, okay, I tell you what, I do need to make some phone calls during the day. Let me do it during this time period. And then, like in the afternoon, if I stopped my job for a minute, if I stood up and did the whole yawn and stretch, let me run to the restroom real quick and took a little break, I might try to work a phone call in there and see if it was something I knew could be handled relatively quickly. But it was really important to me that I did not use my boss's time, that I was being paid to do a job. And then, y'all wait while I'm over here taking care of this. In the early days when I was having to actually be off from work, if I had tried to go into the office, that's exactly what I would have been doing. I would have been working, trying to get a little bit of work done while I was taking care of this monster personal problem over here. So I encourage, schedule your day, look at your day, look at the hours of the day and determine what can I actually get done today. And again, discuss these things with your boss. Don't just give the initial phone call of, okay, we got a problem, and then never say anything else again. Keep your boss in the loop. Let your boss know, let your manager, supervisor know what's going on. And it could be that they can help. We want some compromise, ideally on both sides. Perhaps the boss can kind of partner you up with one of your coworkers, and maybe some of your work can slide over to your coworker while you're still trying to get yourself established and manage these things over here. If you're a seasoned caregiver, come on, guys, we know it. There are just times that things happen. Doctor's appointments come up for your loved one, medical tests or something like that. The doctor wants to go check this or check that. Listen, talk to your boss. See if you can slide a little bit of your work over to a coworker. Maybe somebody can help you out. And then when you get things back, in track, work can come back over to you. That's another possibility. And if you need to be out of the office too, I'm thinking about my grandmother. She had to have a peg tube. And so I had gone back to work, and all of a sudden the doctor's saying, oh, we need to do a peg tube on your grandmother. And I was like, oh, okay. So I just had to leave my office again because my poor grandmother, that was a whole debacle. I talk about it in my book, Goodnight Sweet, A Caregiver's Long Goodbye. It was the complete story that I wrote detailing all about my caregiving journey, from the phone call that started it all up to probating their wills. And I go into quite a bit of detail about the whole peg tube thing, because I had actually gone back to work, and suddenly the hospital's calling saying, well, we can't get her to settle down, so you need to come over. And I was like, well, what do you mean? And I had to drop everything again. I had to look at my boss, and I was like, I'm sorry, I don't know what to do. What can I do to help? I've got to go see about this. So by letting my boss know what was going on, she understood if I had something like that where kind of the bottom fell out and I had to drop, that really did help. Again, good communication with your supervisor. It can go a long way. It can foster a lot of goodwill. So I encourage that if you realize, oh, my loved one has a doctor's appointment and it's 2 weeks from next Thursday, you know what? Let your boss know that as soon as possible. Don't wait until the day or so before to go, oh, and by the way, I'm going to be out of the office. Some of this sounds like the no-brainer stuff, but a lot of it, when you are in that caregiving mode, some of this stuff would elude me, and I would not realize, oh, wait, I've got to tell so-and-so about this. So this is all part of the whole get organized thing. Get organized with your schedule. Understand to the best of your ability what's coming up. Don't let things sneak up on you. Now, the third thing that I want to encourage caregivers who are also employed, I want you to build a team, concentrate on building a team around you so that there are people in place who can help you with these caregiving duties. This came as a shock to me, so it might to you as well. You cannot do this alone. I was appalled at how much help I actually did need, because I truly thought, I was young and stupid and I thought I could do everything. I thought that, oh, I can do this, I can handle all this, and I can work, and I can, be a new bride, and I can still have my friends, and I can still do all of this. Truthfully, no man is an island. I don't mean to be cliche, but that is the truth. No one can do this job alone. So focus on finding a way to build a team around you, people who can help you. In my situation, I was very blessed. I did have a new husband, and he was tremendously helpful. He was a great sport. I appreciated him so much, because it would have been so easy, I would think, for a guy that just got married to look at his wife and say, well, this looks like your responsibility. And, unfortunately, I'm sure there are people who've dealt with that. I've talked with caregivers who've dealt with that, who they feel like they are alone on the front lines. And it grieves me, because I was so blessed that my husband did come alongside me. My husband would actually go, he would take time off, and he would go to the nursing home. He would pick my grandfather up, and he would take him out to the barber shop. He would take him out for a nice haircut and a shave, and it was just a nice afternoon, and they would go together, and they bonded well. They got along well. It was a really special time. My husband talks about that now. He said, I really appreciate having had that time with him, and, just time that we would go together to visit with my grandparents. But my husband would come alongside me. He couldn't do everything. He couldn't make, the decisions. He wasn't on the power of attorney documents. It wasn't his signature that had to go on every document. If they needed a signature, they had to have me. But he did what he could to help me out. And he came alongside. Also, my parents, my mom, and as I said, is my stepdad, but my real dad. These people, even though, my mother had been divorced from their son, she still loved them. They still had a great relationship. And my stepfather, who came along, he embraced them as well. Everyone we had a good family dynamic in that situation. And I'm really, really thankful. It wasn't that way across the board. There were some half brothers involved, and it was a hot mess of, they saw things differently, and they were not as interested in being helpful. They were more out for what could they get. And unfortunately, every family's got stuff like that too. But in my case, I did have a team that was able to come around me. So when I couldn't do something, or when I had to be in one place, I had other folks that could check in on my grandparents. Turned out to be very helpful. As we approached our first anniversary, my husband looked at me and he said, it's time that you take some time off. He said, we're going to the beach for our first anniversary. My first thought was, no, I can't do that. I can't leave my grandparents. And my husband convinced me that it was the healthy, right thing to do. And he was right. He was absolutely right, because they were at the nursing home, so their needs were being cared for. But I also left my mom, and I asked her, I said, would you please take care of anything that comes up? Can they call you if the nursing home has questions or if there are issues? And she said, absolutely. And thankfully, we were able to go away for a few days. We didn't even, I don't think we went for a week. I think it was a 5-day gig. We went down there and just lounged at the beach. It was the best thing I could have done, because by resting, I was able to come back and I was able to approach not only my caregiving duties with a fresh mindset, but also my job. It was like having a reset. And so I really cannot overemphasize the whole self-care thing. It is crucial and vital. Please, please, please do that. So some of you are thinking, well, okay, that's great for you, Leah. You had the husband, you had the parents, fabulous, congratulations. But I'm not in that situation. I don't have that kind of team around me. I have talked to a lot of caregivers that I have really felt deeply for when they're looking at me saying, I really don't have anyone to call on. I have a sibling, but they live out of town. Or worse, I have a sibling who lives in town who has nothing to do with this. Listen, there are all kinds of family dynamics out there. So if you are in a situation where the family is not somewhere that you can necessarily rely on, then check with the Area Agency on Aging. Most cities have one. I know here in Houston, we have an excellent program. They have all kinds of information. You look up their website and it is just, it's unbelievable. The access that you have to information and to help. They have things like Caregiver Support Network. They have nutrition programs. It is an extensive database of providers, so that if suddenly, mother has strained something and you're thinking, oh, I wonder if she's hurt her hip or if she's got a bone issue. Oh, look, let me look at this website and get an orthopedic doctor, and they have all these kinds of resources available for you. So please take advantage of that. Now, another resource available for people who are looking to build a team is, I'm going to say two things here: home care and home health care. Now, a lot of times we use these terms interchangeably, but they really do function differently. So let's make a distinction between the two. When you refer to simply home care, you are talking about non-medical custodial help with the daily activities of living. This is stuff like bathing, grooming, dressing, meal prep, even laundry, things like that. This is home care. Now, when you hear the term home health care, you now have the medical component. So think of it as adding the word health. You've added something to do with health, which is medical, caring for your health, medical. So kind of a little keyword to help you differentiate between the two. These are the therapists, the physical therapists who are going to come into the home. These are the nurses that are going to come into the home. They bring a medical component. Now, the home health care folks can also send in aides who can also help with the non-medical things like the custodial things. These teams and these companies that do this, these guys are great. These people are fantastic. If you've never had an occasion to utilize their help or to even use them in any way, I know when my son was born was the first time I ever had to utilize home health, in the home health care. And my son had jaundice. And so they, wrapped him like the little glowworm in the little lights. And so we had a nurse that came in a couple of times a week just to double check on him, see how he was doing. And it was phenomenal. I thought this is the greatest thing ever. And, that's why I want to say this is something that's available to you as an employee, as someone who is if you're in a situation where you're having to leave the house every day, you certainly want to make sure that your loved one has the proper care and someone who's helping to look after them. Home health care and home care, these guys can help you with stuff like that. Now, people always want to know, well, who pays for it? Well, you do have to understand if you utilize Medicare, Medicare will pay for it for a certain window of time. Medicare does not pay for anything long-term. So if you are looking for, this is my forever solution, we're always going to have the home healthcare nurses coming in. Medicare is not going to take care of it on a permanent basis. Now, you can talk to your physician and you can see what kind of exceptions are available and maybe if the physician can write orders because your loved one needs this kind of attention. Medicare might pick up some of the cost of it. I encourage you to visit medicare.gov. They usually have information on that. And I've certainly talked to your medical provider about it. Find out what is available as far as home health care. There's always the option of private pay. A lot of people cannot take advantage of that. Completely understand that. Some people are going to be able to do that. And some people, maybe the family can pool resources and figure something out there too. So there's an option there, but talk to your provider, your medical provider, and also check out medicare.gov, see what's going on there. Another question about that, really, honestly, you're thinking, well, if Medicare is only going to pay for it for a short period of time, and I don't know if I can afford it, then why do I even want to do this? One thing they can do for you is they can kind of set the tone for what can happen, because what you may be able to do is learn what home health care can do for you, and then you might be able to engage a private nurse or even hire an aide to come in during the day while you are at work. They can come in and guess what they can do? They can help your loved one, of course, but they can help you too, because wouldn't it be nice to come home and find your loved one has been bathed, to find that your loved one has already had dinner, and now all you have to do is come in and you have an opportunity to fix your own dinner, sit down with them, and now you can engage in the actual relationship. Sometimes as caregivers, we almost lose sight of the relationship. Don't let that go. Your loved one is still in there, even if it's a dementia issue, or maybe they're fully cognizant, but they've got some mobility issues or some other type of situation. There are a lot of reasons people are caregivers. Take advantage of every opportunity you have to actually engage with them and to enter into relationship with them. That's something that I can speak from experience. I engaged with my grandparents, and now that they're gone, I can look back on those times, even after they were diagnosed with dementia, and see those times that I connected with them. And that was a treasure. So if you have someone, a home care nurse, a home care aide, a home health nurse, someone who can come in and help you by taking care of your loved one, this can set the tone. And like I said, even if you don't continue to utilize home health care, it might be that you find an Alzheimer's daycare service. They might be able to do something for you. There's lots of options. And by having your loved one seen about, again, it may open up some time for you to not be running around doing the tasks of caregiving, but to actually be able to sit down and take a breath with your loved one. And that can be some special time. Take advantage of that every time you have a chance. Now, obviously, we just mentioned that some families, the dynamics are such that people are arguing and bickering. I definitely had issues with one of my half brothers and his mother. They were more interested in cleaning out my grandparents' house than they were in actually taking care of the people. They left all of that work to me, but they went in and helped themselves. It was ugly. I mean, again, this is stuff that I talk about in my book. I'm very honest and very open about it. But in certain family situations, even mediation can help. If you are having difficulty, get a mediator who can help you out to get some common ground, because then you will be able to look at your loved one or your family member and say, listen, I need help with mom. I need help with dad, or whoever it is you're taking care of. I'm trying to work. I've got these work responsibilities. I've got these hours that I'm working. I need some help. And can you step in and help me? I know you're working too. Could you come on your day off maybe and just provide some care? This is part of building that team that I'm talking about. And another place that you might really look, and this is often overlooked, a lot of people don't think about it, is look at your church. Look at your church and share with your pastor what's going on and find out. There are a lot of times that retirees who are in good health, very active, social retirees, they can come and sit with your loved one for a few hours to help you out. It's something that you can look into. Perhaps you have scaled back from working full-time, you're working part-time. So now instead of being gone 8 hours a day, maybe you're only gone 4 hours a day. Or maybe you're actually working from home, but you're not in a position to be able to just get up and go see about things. You need someone else there while you work. Look at your church. Find out, are there some seniors, some active seniors in your church that might be able to come and sit with you for a while, because, well, not with you, but with your loved one, sit for you to help you out while you do your job. That is a great, great place to look. And so one of the things I want to say as I wrap wrap up, one of the main keys for me was looking realistically at what I could actually do. I was young, I was 29, and for a brief moment, I thought that I was Superwoman and could, in fact, do everything. And of course, that came to a screeching halt when plates began to stop spinning and clatter to the floor. It was a mess trying to realize I did need help and to reach out for that help. And sometimes that help may be that, as a working person and as a caregiver who is trying to manage all these plates, my goodness, you may need a few minutes to go sit down with a therapist. That is totally healthy. That is totally great. And I totally encourage it because I totally did it. And it was very helpful in moving me forward. And it helped me to get the idea that I could manage everything that was going on, but I just needed to be organized. I needed to take charge of the situation. It needed to be okay that I couldn't be everywhere at one time. I had to learn that, and it took time. That was hard. So, I know a lot of our baby boomers, my parents fell into this category. They were not into going to the therapist. That was just something I think my mother would have rather died than actually gone to sit down and try to tell someone how she felt. Speaking from experience as someone who has done that, it is so therapeutic. It is healing. Just sometimes to be able to talk to someone and say, I need you to listen to what I'm going through. I need you to see all these hats that I'm wearing. My job wants this from me. I've got to do this for my loved one. Please do that. Please go see someone. Go sit down and talk to someone. This is part of being realistic about what you can do. Because again, sometimes, and I know I fell into this category too, when I was a new caregiver, I was so anxious to prove to the world that I could do it. Watch this. And then I was so anxious to actually do it because, well, I love my grandparents. Of course, I want to take care of them. That is true. And sometimes people go into feeling a lot of guilt because they're like, well, I'm spending more time at work than I am with my loved one or doing things for my loved one, things that they need me to do. Again, realistically look at what you can do. Carve out time. We have to be deliberate about things. Self-care. You have to be very deliberate about self-care. Let me ask you this. Do you feel guilty about going to get an oil change for your car? I bet you don't. I generally don't. Why not? It's good maintenance for your car. Your car's an investment. You want to make sure that car runs as long. You want it to last until the wheels fall off, right? Well, the way to do this, we know, is through oil changes and regular maintenance. Guess what? You need the same thing. Not an oil change, not unless you're into eating salmon, and that's fine, go for it. But I'm talking about genuine self-care, where you take care of yourself. Because guess what? If you can't take care of yourself and you fall out from exhaustion or something else, you get sick and you're down and you can't do anything, who's going to take care of your loved one? So this is really important. That is part of understanding realistically, what can I do? So as we kind of wrap up, I want to tell you as caregivers, please be encouraged. You're doing fine. You're going to make it. You are going to make it. You're going to do this. You're doing a great job. I want you to be educated. I want you to know what the options are. Look at some of these websites that we talked about. Find out what Family Medical Leave Act can do for you. Find out what Medicare would pay for in the way of home health care, home care, whatever it is you need. Be encouraged, be educated, but be empowered. I promise you can do this. I promise that you're going to understand. When you understand your authority, when you understand what you can do, and when you understand what your limits are, I'm telling you, that empowers you to be able to take care of your loved one with no apology. You don't have to look at anybody and give any excuses as to why you didn't go to the nursing home or the assisted living today. You took the day off. It's okay. Be empowered to make those kind of choices.